Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you so very much for tuning in tonight. And those of you who are joining us for the first time, a special thank you. Tonight, I want to begin with one word: attention. I believe that when we give attention to the people we love, and to the things we love, and to that which we are passionate about, there is no choice. There is no other thing or other result but good results. And so often we believe in something, or there is someone in our lives that we care about. Could be a lover, could be a friend, family member. But we very rarely give our undivided attention. It is said that wherever attention goes, energy goes. So imagine if you had something that you really care about, or someone you really care about, and you were to give them your undivided attention, what will happen? Well, don't ponder. Give it a shot. Anyway, tonight, my guest is Romola Lucas. On the other side of the break, I'm going to introduce you to her. I'm not going to spend much time talking about or giving you an introduction about anything per se. We have a packed show. I want to spend a lot of time talking to this very brilliant, very accomplished, very fascinating woman. And so I'm not going to rob you or her of this precious time. Stay tuned.
You're so fresh as the morning dew. My first true love is.
I am back. For those of you who are now joining us, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host on CWS. The woman next to me on the other side of the screen is Romola Lucas. Romola, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I want to start by exploring your bio a little bit. Romola O. Lucas, a founding shareholder of Lucas. How do you pronounce this?
Hanska.
Hanska and Associates. Prior to founding the firm, Ms. Lucas worked in the real estate group of a major law firm in Philadelphia, where she worked in commercial real estate financing, sales and acquisitions on behalf of developers, REITs, and major banks. In addition to a Juris Doctorate from Howard University School of Law, Ms. Lucas also has a Master of Laws degree in tax from Temple University School of Law and a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Science from the University of the District of Columbia. Ms. Lucas's practice is not mainly focused on real estate, working with entrepreneurs and artists and with seniors, and she is admitted to the bar in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Ms. Lucas is also a founding member of the Caribbean Film Academy, a non-profit dedicated to supporting and sharing the work of filmmakers of Caribbean descent in the region and the diaspora. CAFA, which the Caribbean Film Academy means, right?
Yes.
Hosts monthly Caribbean film screenings, interviews Caribbean filmmakers, and publicizes their work. Makes Caribbean films available for viewing through its site, Anansi Studios. Produces films in collaboration with Caribbean filmmakers, and is in the process of developing an educational program to help improve the skills of filmmakers in the Caribbean. That's a mouthful.
That's wonderful. Yes, it is.
And that is just the tip of the iceberg as to who you are. But tonight, I'm hoping that during this conversation, we'll get to find out a little bit more about who Romola is and all the wonderful things you're doing, your philanthropy and all this stuff. Well, congratulations on your accomplishments as an entrepreneur and philanthropist. Well, you're a co-founder. I read those before. And the Caribbean Film Academy (CAFA), a non-profit dedicated to supporting and sharing the work of filmmakers of Caribbean descent in the region diaspora. You're all these things, but what drives you?
What drives me is being able to work with people and
Mhm.
support people who are pursuing their own passions.
Ah. So, what was your favorite activity in high school?
Playing badminton.
Really?
Playing badminton, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what about badminton did you really like?
I was good at it, so I used to have a lot of fun playing.
Ah.
That's really all it was. And it was, it was my first opportunity to actually engage in sports, in any significant way, in school. So I jumped right in.
And badminton can be quite competitive.
Yeah. I never played competitively.
Right.
I just played in school.
You just enjoyed it.
Yes.
And you mentioned helping people just
Yeah.
now. What comes to mind when you mentioned that just now, or who comes to mind?
No one in particular.
Uh-huh.
I am definitely attracted to people who are, whether or not they have a 9 to 5,
Hmm.
they're doing something in their lives that makes them light up. And when I interact with people like that and I see it, then there's an immediate connection. We find a way to somehow work together.
Right. Does your legal profession, does that help you in any way in that?
Oh yeah, it's a great asset for me in other parts of my life. Just because of the training, and the training specifically has just caused me to understand how to go about getting things done. And with that, I meet a lot of people who, they want to start a business, but they don't know where to begin. And I would find this out just by having a conversation with them about something completely off topic, and then they'll say, and then we might get around to the subject of what it is that they really want to do, and then they'll say, oh well, I wanted to start a business, but I don't know how to do this and I don't know how to do that, and then I'm able to use the knowledge that I have just from being a lawyer and
Right.
the training to sort of help guide the process. Of course, it has to be led by the person. I can't do it for them, but if I'm willing to lend an ear and a hand whenever I can.
It's funny, it's interesting you said that. In my opening remarks, I spoke about giving attention. And I should have also mentioned the importance of listening. And you seem to have both of those qualities, right? You listen very well. And I guess that's a great asset to you.
Yes, it is. You pick up a lot of things just by letting people talk and just listening. Yes.
Wow. So how did your parents influence you?
Well, let's start with my mom.
Uh-huh.
She raised me. My mother is, I want to say, the person that has taught me the most about life and how to be as an adult. She is conscientious. She's hardworking. She's most of the time she's fair.
She is what?
Fair.
Is she listening tonight?
Yeah, she is.
Okay.
And she just has a lot of the qualities that I admire and respect in people. And I realized that that's where I was first introduced to them.
To what?
That's where I was first introduced to them. Like those types of qualities, working hard, understanding that life is not fair, and nothing is handed to you. You have to work for it.
Ah, I like that. So when did you discover that you had a passion for films?
This came quite, I want to say recently, but then probably not.
Uh-huh.
I come from a family of creatives. and I just never knew what my part of it was. And it's on both sides of my family. So my mom has a brother um, who still lives in Guyana, and he's a very popular artist in
Uh-huh.
Guyana. Not musical artist, but he does sculptures and he does storytelling, that kind of stuff. And he's been doing it for years. He designs Mashmani costumes. He
Really?
designs sculptures. Um, the yes, he does all those things. So there's and my mother herself is a creative. She's into drama and writing. And then on my dad's side, my grandfather was a woodworker, and all of his kids are good with their hands in that way. And even in my generation, a couple of my cousins are architects, and there is a lot of creative energy just flowing around. And I was always the strict academic. I'm in school, I'm doing science, and then law and all of this stuff. So after I stopped working at the firm, I started to explore. I started to look for what it is that was going to center me and ground me. And it, going to work, getting a paycheck is good. Pays the bills. You have a roof. You have a roof over your head. You have food to eat. But it was not necessarily like fulfilling. So when I had the opportunity to sort of, I don't know, gear my life towards it being the kind of life where I got some sort of fulfillment out of it, the direction it took was on the creative side.
So let's go back to that part. You were, whilst you were working and doing something that you were trained to do, you weren't grounded. You didn't feel grounded or fulfilled.
Not at all. And I was working in corporate America. So at the law firm, I was one of 3 or 4 black attorneys. I was the only one with locks. So there's a lot I had to overcome in order to be there, in order to go to work, and in order to be there. And while I enjoyed, the practice of law, there was just something missing. And because that's all I was doing, I wasn't doing anything else. I would work and go home. Work and go home.
I want to ask you this question because it comes up so often from time to time. Women in corporate America and black women in corporate America. Black women that have natural hairstyle or wear their hair natural in corporate America. Can you explore that a little bit? What is that like from your perspective, from your experience?
There aren't too many women that wear their hair naturally in corporate America, and it's largely because of how they're perceived.
Right.
So you don't want to come off as too black or too militant or too any of those things. But then when I think about it, I have to balance that against many women have the need to be flexible and versatile in the way that they style their hair. And locks can be restricting. So because once you have them, you have them. The most you can do is style them and have different styles to your locks, but you can't have locks and then one day and then have straight hair the next day and then have curly hair or blonde hair or any of those things. So it takes away that kind of versatility in your personal style. But for me, I started wearing locks in undergrad, and that was over 20 years ago. And I haven't changed. But I do find that in the corporate world, it's not very common, and I do think that for us women who wear our hair like this, it keeps us back.
You feel so?
Yes. Because I think it kind of suggests that we're not willing to conform completely.
I understand that principle, the conformity thing.
Yeah.
And corporate America does, enact some serious toll on you when you do not conform.
Yeah.
Right. I know that. So, what led you to start CAFA, which provides a curated platform for Caribbean films?
I was sitting down one day talking to a friend of mine who's a filmmaker, young guy from Karakou, which is one of the islands that make up Grenada. Grenada is made up of 3 islands. He's from one of them. And I said to him, and this is just because a week before, and I remember this distinctly, I heard of this Caribbean film that was being shown, screened somewhere. I don't remember where. And I started to think to myself, are there Caribbean people making films? And if they're making the films, where are they? And how come I can't see them? And I started to look. And I found out that there are filmmakers in Trinidad, there are filmmakers in Jamaica, not too many in Guyana. There are filmmakers in Barbados. There are filmmakers in all these individual Caribbean islands. But there's no, at least in Brooklyn, or at least in the United States, there's no like cohesive, unified place or where you can see Caribbean films and even have any knowledge of who's making films and what the films are. So I mentioned this to him, and he said, I feel the same way. And then I said, well, I've thought of like forming an organization where we just, get films and screen them and have people come look at them. And he said, I had the same idea. So I was like, okay. So it took us maybe 2 months of going back and forth, and then we started the organization. And then we started to find filmmakers and films. And we've learned that since then that there's a thriving industry in the Caribbean, and people are making great films.
All because you asked the question.
All because, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. And so what does CAFA offer a filmmaker with a small film that's, say, YouTube or their own personal website streaming of the film? Let me rephrase this. What does CAFA offer a filmmaker with a small film that, say, YouTube or their own personal website streaming of the film can't offer?
Okay, a couple of things. So by allowing us to screen the film, we do a few things. We screen it, and so the 15 to 20 to 25 people that come to the screenings are people that had no knowledge or idea or awareness of the film beforehand. So the screening itself is screenings themselves are making people in the community aware of these films and the filmmakers. But in addition to that, we blog about the films and the filmmakers. So there's a wider global audience that becomes aware of what they're doing as well. And then we're building a platform where we're going to collect Caribbean films. So when you have your film on your individual website, you're just promoting your website and your film.
Right.
But if your film is part of a collective, and someone else is also promoting it, then your film gets promoted along with a whole bunch of other films and a whole bunch of other filmmakers. And people begin to become aware of this one place or one or two places online or wherever that you can go to get these films. And so it increases the chances that your film will be seen exponentially.
So how has social media been helpful in that regard?
Social media has been great. We started the organization in January of 2012.
2012?
But it took us until May to start actually engaging in social media in any meaningful way, and that started with the blog. And so I started to research places where Caribbean films were being shown. And it turns out that, I found out that there are all these film festivals in the Caribbean. Aruba has a film festival, Curacao has a film festival, Jamaica has a film festival, Antigua has a film festival, Trinidad and Tobago has the biggest and probably the best film festival in the Caribbean. Belize has a film festival. Bahamas, Bermuda.
Guyana
does not. But I started to learn about these film festivals, and a lot of them are international. Like Bahamas and Bermuda and Aruba and Curacao, they're international film festivals, meaning that they bring in films from Europe and the United States and all over, and they don't really show Caribbean films.
Oh.
Although they're starting to now, like Aruba last year started the Caribbean Spotlight where they featured a few Caribbean films. Curacao actually shows films made by people from Curacao, and there's a thriving film industry there. But Trinidad is the one major film festival in the Caribbean that is focused on Caribbean films. They do have films from other countries and from other cultures, but their focus is on the Caribbean. So it's usually really big, and all the Caribbean filmmakers who are making good films try to get their films
Right.
into that festival. But because of that, we were able to start learning about who the filmmakers are and reach out to them. And basically say, listen, we want to show your film. We love it. We've seen it. We love it, and we want to show it. We want to share it. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive. People are happy that groups like ours are reaching out to them and asking them for their films so that we can.
And they give it to
people.
you?
They give it to us. Or they'll contact us through the blog and say, okay, I have this film. Our last screening, we showed a documentary, Los Paquires, which is a documentary about traditional Cuban music band that was started back in the 50s. And today, they're still very popular. Young people, old people, all sorts of people come out to hear them play. This was a documentary about them, but the way we got it is that the producer of the film found our blog, sent us a message to the blog saying, listen, we just completed this documentary and we want you to show it. And we said, okay, send us the film. She sent us the film, and she was very good. Some people are technically challenged, but
Right.
she was good. She got the film to us, and we looked at it. It was great, and we showed it.
So what is screening like? I mean, how do you prepare for screening? What goes into that?
So there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that goes into the screening, and before I get into it, I'll just say at this point it's the returns don't match the effort, but we do know that this is a long-term thing for us, and we're cultivating an audience. We're cultivating an audience that has an appreciation for this type of art. So we're going to take our time and stick to it. But we do several things. We blog about the screening. So we'll write a blog post that describes the films. We'll put the trailers on there and whatever artwork comes with the films and whatever information we have on the filmmaker we'll include. And then we have several social media sites that we put it on. So there's Facebook. So we'll create a Facebook event and invite everyone that we know.
Right.
And the venue where we hold the screenings, the woman there does the same thing. She's great. Nicholas Variety on Fulton Street. We have a meetup group which has grown to, I want to say, over 70 members now. So we post it in the meetup group. We tweet about it. We have Instagram. We would we would create a flyer for the screening, and share it on Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter and wherever we can find places to just get the word out that these films are being shown.
No, I'm going to shift gears a little because you've dropped several pearls. Part of the audience of this show are young people around the world. And so I'm always looking for teaching moments. You're quite accomplished, academically, professionally. You mentioned just now, a few moments ago, that the returns don't always match the effort and so on, yet you keep going, and you said it in such a very nonchalant way, because we are building something. And how much of that attitude did you apply to your academic journey?
All of it.
All of it.
I've been to school and in school for way too long. So I have a bachelor's degree, I have a law degree, I have a master's in law degree. It's a lot, but I felt like in terms of, I'm from Guyana. We value education.
Right.
And we do believe that, you're educated, you can do just about anything that you want to do. And I do believe that is true. So, taking from my mom, um, education was always important to me, and I always saw it as It turns out, and I saw it this way, and it turns out that this is the way that it is. It's given me the tools that I need to now live my life however I want to live it, on my own terms, and without the fear of the one thing I dread is waking up every day and going to work because I have to, and because I have no choices in terms of what I do with my time. I have to work because I have to pay a mortgage, and I have to pay the car note, and I have to do all these things. I dread that, and I find that because probably because of my particular circumstances in terms of my education, um, I don't have those restrictions. Not because I have a lot of money, but because I my perception of life and what I should be doing is completely different, and it has freed me of the need for those things. Um, and it's not to say that there's anything wrong with anyone living the way that they live. It's not a judgment. It's just that for me personally, um, I have found that the time and effort that I put into my education, if you look at it from the outside, um, yeah, you might say the same thing. Okay, you've done all of this, but um, has the return on the investment been matched? And I would say yes, 100%.
You have satisfaction.
Yes.
Today I had the honor of speaking to a woman. I'm not at liberty to mention her name live, but I was very impressed. She impressed upon me the importance of doing something that you love and that you're called to do. I'm paraphrasing, but I want to get it right. It is more important to her to do something that she loves and she's called to do than to do something where the trappings of success comes from doing what you really don't love to do. And I got that. I understand that. There's a certain freedom that comes from being able to do
Yeah.
what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I want you to, I want to explore this other part because there are young people listening and can run away with the idea, well, I don't have to get an education.
Right.
I don't necessarily have to do that. I can do whatever I want. The ultimate goal is freedom. But please impress upon them that you sought that first, and you now see, or you do see that it does give you the flexibility to do what you want.
Yeah, I mean, without it, you're limited. There's very little that you know and that you can feel confident in doing without being educated. And I think it would be very difficult to successfully be free if you're not educated, because the most valuable thing you get from your education is an understanding of how to be and how to maneuver your way through man's constructs as well as God's,
Yeah.
and understand exactly where you need to be in there. And not to say that you can't do it if you're not educated, but education gives you the type of freedom that will allow you to actually do this stuff.
Let's take a break on that note. We are back with the lovely Romola Lucas. So, are you having a good time so
I
far?
am, I am, I am.
I'm glad to hear that. I want to start off by asking you, um, what do you, where do you find the most of your material? Festival submissions, recommendations. Where do you find most of it?
Um, Social media.
Social media.
I troll. I troll. Actually, it's yeah. I have found that Twitter is like a vast source of information. It's unbelievable.
Don't remind me, please. Don't remind me.
It's unbelievable what you could do with those 140 characters. Um, but I read a lot.
Uh-huh.
So on Twitter, I follow film festivals, I follow filmmakers, and when they post stuff that looks interesting, I share it on our Facebook page myself and on our blog. But really, that's what it is. It's just I'm reading constantly, and following information sources that I'm learning exist,
Mhm.
and I'm starting to collect them all in one place. And so I get Google alerts that tell me, like I put in the name of you, for example,
Right.
and whenever your name pops up in the news, I get an alert, and I can read it, and I can say, okay, I'm gonna just jump on this right now
Right.
and tweet it or something like that. But that's what I do.
So you aggregate news.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
and that allows me to be a little bit on top of what's happening as it happens. Because I mean, when you look at some of the very popular film blogs, and the most popular that I know of in the black community is Shadow and Act. Um, they're always breaking news. They're constantly in the know in terms of everything that's happening, and that's what we're striving for with Caribbean films, and Caribbean filmmakers. It's not as easy because we're so fragmented.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the things that I've kind of learned, like in navigating this whole thing. We have communities. We have Jamaican communities. We have Trinidadian communities. We have Barbadian communities, Guyanese communities, um, and as but not necessarily a Caribbean community in terms of art. We share food.
Right.
So we're going to Jamaican restaurants and get oxtail
Right.
as a Guyanese,
Right.
and we share music. We love soca, we love reggae.
Right.
That's our thing. But I find that in terms of living here, the Caribbean community is not
Cohesive.
yes, it's not cohesive. There's a lot of bridging the gap that has to be done, in order to inform every community about your activities. So we consider ourselves to be a Caribbean group. We're not focused on any one particular country. So realistically, in order for me to get information out about any of our activities, I have to know someone in every community and have the type of rapport with them where I can share the information with them so that they'll share it with their people. That's just how it works.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So there is a need, there is an opening
Oh, yeah.
for a very practical aggregate.
Yeah. There is need for aggregation. And when you think about it in films, and a filmmaker we interviewed recently brought this up. They're from Antigua. And the point that he made was that they made their first film in 2003, and it came out at the same time the Titanic came out. But in Antigua, it beat the Titanic at the box office. Everyone went to see their film,
Wow.
and not as many people went to see the Titanic. But the thing, so it was a huge film in Antigua, and it was also like the first feature film that was made in the Eastern Caribbean. But no one else knows about it in the Caribbean. Like I lived in Guyana. I lived in Guyana, and I don't think anybody in Guyana knows about this film.
No.
And maybe in Trinidad they might know now. But the point he made is that there's no way to get. You would think that maybe television would bridge the gap. So maybe someone makes a film in Antigua, and then through television channels it gets to the other Caribbean countries. But that doesn't happen either. There's no systematic way of getting information like this from one Caribbean country to another. so that everyone is aware of what everyone else is doing.
We have to work on that.
Yeah,
We have to.
yeah,
Yeah, we have to. I don't think it's impossible.
right,
I think that they just haven't thought of it yet, or you know, or
right.
how to put it together.
How to put it together. But I mean, what happens here in Brooklyn, for example, is a microcosm of that.
Right.
So it's the same thing. I mean, there's certain types of events that get around in the Caribbean community. Period. Music, food, yes,
And you know, at one time we could have used the excuse geography,
right,
landmass, space and time. But with cyberspace, no, we have no excuse.
none,
I
none.
don't know what the solution is, but I think we need to work on that. I think it's very important. How do you bring these pockets, these communities together to consume something that is important, something other than food and music?
Right. And I mean,
Well, how does music make it though?
I think it's because from a very long time ago, music transcended the physical borders.
Right.
I remember being 12 years old and listening to Bob Marley, um, who was in Jamaica.
Right.
So we were able to do that a long time ago. But um, and I think when people are able to see the value, one of the things that I have found with doing these films, or with this entire process, is that I've learned about other Caribbean cultures this way.
Mm.
So we showed a documentary made by someone on Curacao, and the documentary basically just in the documentary they just basically gave you the history of Curacao, and you were able to get like a first-hand view of what it's like to live there, what it looks like, what the beaches look like, what the water looks like, what the houses look like, what the people eat, all of those things just from looking at the documentary. And I find that to be very fascinating because we're all Caribbean people, and there are a lot of people that didn't even know that Curacao existed, and then that it was even a part of the Caribbean. So there's that aspect of it, and I think when people start to see the value in being able to learn about other cultures through film and see how very similar we all are in the Caribbean region, even though Curacao is Dutch.
Right.
Well, the last colonizers were Dutch.
Right.
We had Dutch colonizers in Guyana, so there are there's similarities in the names and stuff like that. But I think when people start to see how similar we are beyond food and music, that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. What do you look for when selecting a movie to showcase on your website?
Right. So the most important thing is I want to say creativity, because really anyone can make a film.
Right.
You just need a camera, and you need some people who can pretend to be somebody, and then you can shoot it.
Right.
But what sets films apart from other types of art is the visual aspect. So there has to be evidence of some kind of care and attention to presenting this story visually. So the end product can't look like a video. It has to look like a film. If it looks like a video, we would be like, okay, the story is good, maybe the acting is good, but the visual elements that tie it all together to make it a film that makes a difference between a video and a film, if they're lacking, then we tend not to show the films because we want it to be complete in that respect.
So you're very selective.
Very selective, yes.
So you've had to reject a lot.
Yes, we have had to reject a lot of films.
One of your filmmakers that you promote is Mason Richards,
Yes,
Guyanese brother.
yes,
Very talented.
yes.
Seawall. Tell me about your experience with Mason.
Wow. It's actually a pretty amazing experience. So I met Mason a year ago at the Guyana Tri-State Alliance's event, Independence Day, I think, for Guyana, where he got an award. So this it was at Borough Hall, and it was completely crowded. I've never seen so many Guyanese people in one place. It was so crowded. But at the end of the event, I found him. I knew he was going to be there.
Right.
And I found him, and I just walked up to him. This was in the infancy of our group. And I'd learned about his film through Pat Jordan.
All right.
So I went to this event knowing that he would be there and saying, you know what, I have to start doing this whole networking thing. So I stopped him and I started to talk to him, and he was so open and agreeable to everything that I was saying, and he agreed that there is a need for an organization like CAFA, and he would love to like sit down and talk with me. But he was traveling for a couple of weeks, and when he came back, he would give me a call. I was like, okay, this went very well. In 2 weeks, he did call me.
That's Mason.
Yeah,
Keeps his word.
he sure did.
Yeah.
And we hit it off. We sat down. We had, I don't know, we spoke maybe 2 hours about all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And the end result is that, yes, you can screen my film. You can have it. You can screen it. And just tell me what I need to do to help you.
Yeah.
And so we did. We had a good turnout that day. He also helped to promote it. And it's been, ever since then, it's been an ongoing relationship. We screened it a couple more times. And now we're like talking to him about other projects that we can work on together. Just because he is very talented and he is so willing to share his talents with other people.
That's one of the qualities about Mason that I like. For those of you who have never seen the trailer, sorry, you can see it when you log on to CWS on the homepage. It's called The Seawall by Mason Richards, one of Guyana's diamonds, and we have many, right?
Yes, we have many.
Yeah. So, what are some of your favorite Caribbean films?
Well, I have to go back to when I was a kid and say my most favorite Caribbean film is If Wishes Were Horses. And I wish I could see it again.
Why you can't see it again?
I don't know where to get it. I have no idea where to go to get it.
Are you? No.
Right.
I can think of names like Ken Corsby and Claude Leandro, and I mean these are prominent. Maybe Pat Long, or you think she might know?
Maybe, but I would love to get that film and get it restored, and be able to share it with younger Guyanese, because that is a classic.
But let's hope somebody who's listening and has access to it or knows how, right, can contact us.
Right.
Wow.
So then there's The Harder They Come.
Yes.
So those two are on the top of the list. And then in terms of more recent films, there's a Trinidadian filmmaker. His name is Sean Escade. He made a film named Fish. It's one of the best films I've seen. And he has it online for free. You can just go to his website and look at it.
Fish?
Fish. It's a short film, and he's working on the feature. But in terms of, when I mentioned like visual storytelling, his film is a very, very good example of that.
Really?
Yeah, one of the most important elements of visual storytelling is not using dialogue choosing not to use dialogue when you can, capture the moment or the activity or whatever it is just on film. And he did a great job of that.
Are you in touch with him?
I'm in touch with him, and we have his film. We've screened it.
You screened it
a few times, yes. Yes, and that's how I saw his film. He entered it into a festival on YouTube, and I was trolling festivals, and I saw it, and I reached out to him and said, "Listen, I saw your film. It's great. I want to screen it." And he too. It was like, wow, I'm glad to hear that you're interested in it. I would love for you to screen it, and we did.
I'm what I'm present to is how often, as you mentioning trolling.
Yes.
Right? It's part of your work.
Yes.
And it is amazing how often we miss the little things that are necessary to make us successful and to do the things that we don't really want to do, the mundane things.
Right.
There you are, trolling and reading a lot, and how important is that? Let's say you're talking to a group of young folks. How important is that?
It's very important. I mean, I have a passion for what I do. I
Uh-huh.
love to see good films, and I love to meet the people who make them,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to share them. So I mean, when I take those three things and I put them together, this is what is needed. I have to go out and find the stuff that I like and put it all together so that I can share it.
Right, right.
So this is what I do, and that's kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. That's kind of where understanding how to maneuver comes in with your education.
Yes.
So that's actually the benefit of it. It's like you understand what you need to do,
Right,
and you're not too big
right.
to do it
Yes.
because you're functioning from a different place.
Humility,
altogether.
humility.
Yes.
It gives you access to humility.
Yes, it does.
You mentioned those two films, If Wishes Were Our Horses and The Harder They Come, which I really love. But you didn't mention one of my other favorites, Smile Orange.
Oh yes, I don't know why I did it because that is also one of my favorite films. Definitely.
Oh gosh, Jean in the chat room asked, "What do you like about the independent film industry?"
What I like about it is the creativity and the initiative,
Mm-hmm.
and just the raw desire to tell stories and tell them in the most creative way possible. We named our online platform Anansi Studios because Anansi is like the master storyteller,
Yes.
the filmmakers. That's how we see the filmmakers that we work with. They're when you think about what goes into a film,
Mm-hmm.
they sit there and they write the story, and then they have to figure out how to get the money to now make it into a film, how to get the actors, the whole production process, and then through all of that, they have to remain true to their art, which is telling this story in a visual way and in such a way that people are going to look at it and at the end of it be like, wow, I love that.
Yeah.
So just to be around that type of energy, which I think exists in the independent film world, which I know exists in the independent film world more than in the commercial film world.
Mm-hmm.
It's invigorating just to be around that energy.
Based on your experience, would you say that there is a genre of Caribbean films that seems to be very popular?
Um, Actually, no.
No?
It's wide open. Most of the films that I see are dramas.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are animated films, which is great because the animations themselves are great.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of films are a mixture of live people and animation. So that just speaks to the versatility of the filmmakers. And there are some films that tell traditional Caribbean stories. The filmmakers I mentioned earlier from Antigua, Howard and Mitzi Allen, they made a film named The Skin.
The Skin?
The Skin. And The Skin is about, folklore, the Sukuya.
Hmm.
And the Sukuya in Guyana is Olhide.
Right.
So they made a film about Olhide. They took the story and they weren't slaves to the story. They just used that to create a film. And it's an amazing film to look at.
And you have that in your collection?
Yes, we have that.
What is your website?
Our film website is anansistudios.co. And we spell Anansi ANANSI.
Mm-hmm. Studios.
Studios, yeah.
.com.
.co. CO.
.co, okay.
Yes. Our blog site, which is where all the information is,
Mm-hmm.
is cinecaribes.com.
How is it? Cine?
Cine, like cinema.
Right.
but
CINE.
CARIBES.com.
.com.
Yeah.
LK asked, who's your mentor? Do you believe in mentoring? Well, let me flip it. Do you believe in mentoring, and who is your mentor?
I do believe in mentoring. and I'm looking for a mentor.
You are.
I think having a mentor would be it would be invaluable to me.
Right.
So I am looking.
Uh-huh. Good. And G asked, what if any other Guyanese filmmakers have you featured?
We haven't featured any other Guyanese filmmakers other than Mason, just because they're hard to get in touch with. So I know that a couple of years ago, there was a Cine Guyana film festival, sort of,
Right.
right here in Brooklyn,
Uh-huh.
and I attended it, and I was able to see 8 short films that were made by Guyanese filmmakers. But I haven't been able to get any of those films to show in the screenings because that's one of the problems with working with independent filmmakers, especially the ones that are actually in the Caribbean.
Okay.
And it's communication is difficult because a lot of them don't have websites, they don't blog, they're not on social media, and unless I know someone who knows someone, I am unable to access them.
Well, there's one that comes to mind, a friend of mine, Mahadio Shivraj. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I've heard of him, but I haven't been able to meet him.
All right, I'll introduce you to him.
Okay.
I will. Very good friend of mine. I went to see his last film. I saw 2 of his films, Jasmine for a Rose,
Right.
and this last one, Brown Sugar is Too Bitter for Me. Oh, that is hilarious. I'm not trying to plug him, but he's my Guyanese brother, and it's a good film. You laughed, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried. So yeah, so I said it. I did.
Right.
It was very good, very good. I am going to introduce you to him.
That would be great.
Yeah. That's not a problem.
So then I do know that, like, of those shorts that I saw, Margaret Kelman made one named Masquerade, and she's actually gotten it into a few film festivals.
What's her name?
Margaret Kelman.
Uh-huh.
And then there is this other guy, Kojo McPherson. His film that was a part of that series as well. I think it was at the Bahamas Film Festival last year. So, I mean, they're there. And this is all a work in progress. Like, being able to find ways to reach these filmmakers, to let them know that this is what we're doing and that we would love to share their work.
So there's no depository or repository of filmmakers in the Caribbean.
No, that does not exist. In Trinidad, there are a whole bunch of filmmakers because the Trinidadian Film Festival has kind of nurtured the film industry in Trinidad. So they have a lot of filmmakers, and they all know each other.
I'm going to put a directory together, right?
Okay.
All right.
That
The CWS film directory.
that is needed.
All right,
That is
definitely. I'm going to
needed.
work
That
on
is
that.
needed.
Does CAFA also distribute films, and what are some of the challenges for distribution of Caribbean films?
Yes, we distribute films, but not through CAPA, through Anansi Studios,
Uh-huh.
because CAPA is a non-profit.
Okay.
So, part of our effort to support the filmmakers is to help them to actually make some money off of their films, because these films are a labor of love.
Uh-huh.
They use all their own money to make them. So if we can help them to get some money back, that's what we want to do. So we put the films on a different site, which is the nancystudios.co site.
Mm-hmm.
What was the question?
The question is, what are some of the challenges
Right.
distributing Caribbean films?
Right. So I guess the biggest challenge is competing with film festivals and being able to get films, because a lot of film festivals, don't like when the films are available online, and so the filmmakers are a little reluctant to let us, to put the films online before they feel that they've maxed out on the festivals.
Okay.
And so there's a huge lag time between a lot of, in terms of our ability to access some of the films that we've already seen and we know that we like and we want to put on the site. And then the older films that are probably available because they've run the film festival circuit. Again, the issue is not being able to contact the filmmakers to get them.
So for those of us who are new to this or don't know, what does the film festival actually do for a filmmaker?
Well, it helps build an audience for them,
Uh-huh.
and an audience for their film. And a lot of filmmakers or emerging filmmakers start off making short films,
Okay.
and the short film is a way for them to tell their story without the huge budget that's needed for a feature length film. And then it allows them to galvanize people and supporters for their film. Um, and it's like a calling card.
Mm-hmm.
If the Cannes Film Festival, if you're able to get your short film into that, if your film is accepted into that festival, that's a huge marketing boon for you, because there's some kind of official recognition that your film is great. And you can certainly use that as a filmmaker, um, as currency to make other people's films and actually get paid to do it, or even to allow you to be a better fundraiser for your own film, so that the next film you make, you're not making with your own money, but you were able to get someone else to help you with the funds to make it. So that's really what film festivals do. It gets them out.
And Mason's work.
Yeah.
Mason's film was at the.
Mason's film was selected to Cannes in 2011. Yes. Yeah.
I understand Kappa's and Nancy Studios produces films in collaboration with Caribbean filmmakers. What project are you currently working on?
Yes. Right. So the other part of what CAFA does is that we actually take our own money, and we will produce a film by a Caribbean filmmaker. Um, and so far we're working on our second film, and it so happens to be with the same filmmaker, Wayne Benjamin. And so we're currently working on 6 a.m. Jessica, which is a film. He's Jamaican, and he wrote the film to be shot in Jamaica. But we kind of turned the tables on him and told him that we were going to shoot it. We were going to make a Caribbean film,
right,
in Brooklyn. And so he came up here,
right,
and we've been shooting this film since the end of May, and we have one more day to go, and we'll be done.
One more day.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges you had in shooting that film?
Money.
Money.
Money is a challenge, always. But that actually turned out not to be our biggest challenge on this film. What is going to be our biggest challenge is the post production, finding finding people with the skills that we need. So, we have our own in-house cinematographer, Justin Blaze, who's also co-founder of CAFA.
Right.
He's a great cinematographer, and so we have that. And usually the filmmaker is also the director and the writer, so that's taken care of. But what we need are editors, sound designers, composers to do the score, someone to color the film, those types of things. And that's more difficult to come by. It's hard to find someone who's an editor and is a good editor. And it's hard to find someone to do the sound design of the film, which is very important. And then you don't even realize that all these jobs are done by different people.
Right.
Usually, which causes a lot of filmmakers to become like one-man band. They learn to do everything because it's very hard to find people who can do these things. But I think it's better if you're able to spread it out, because each person, the editor, the sound designer, the colorist, they can all bring different skill set and different creative energy to your film, and then overall you have a better film because you are able to tap into the energy to use other
Different talent.
Yeah.
Let's take a break.
Yes.
We are back with my guest, Romola Lucas. Romola? You having a good time so far?
Yes, yes.
Good,
yes.
good. Um, but let me check the chat room before I ask this question. LK asked, "Is film distribution expensive?"
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is. And right now we're paying for it. But the costs come in storing films in a place where, when someone purchases it,
Uh-huh.
it's easy for them to stream it. And so it took us a while to find the company that we ended up using. But we have a company that we use, so we have to pay them a monthly storage fee and streaming
store
fee.
it?
Yes.
And is it stream on demand or?
Yes, it's on demand. So the way our website is set up, if you want to look at a film, you just click on it. You get to see the trailer right there on the site.
Uh-huh.
But then you click on the link, and it'll take you to the page where you can then
Pay for it.
pay to look at the film. Yeah,
Oh, okay. And does that work out? Is that working out well?
it's a little slow right now because we haven't actually started. We haven't been strongly promoting the
Mhm.
site as yet because
Mhm.
we're trying to build up the content a little bit more before we actually put it out there strongly. But we're planning on having a launch for the online distribution
Okay.
a little later in the year.
And Brian asks, what are some of the challenges finding filmmakers?
The biggest one is that they're not online. That's the biggest challenge. But that's with respect to Caribbean filmmakers in the Caribbean. In terms of Caribbean filmmakers who are in the diaspora,
Uh-huh.
like right here in the United States, a lot of them don't identify as Caribbean. And
Oh.
it takes a lot of digging to figure out, okay, this is a Caribbean filmmaker, or this person has a Caribbean heritage, or something like that. It's not something that filmmakers here, Caribbean filmmakers here, who are living here, who are trying to make it here, necessarily publicize about themselves. So that's the biggest challenge when dealing with filmmakers who are in the diaspora.
And do you find do they seek you out sometimes?
Not unless they've been told something specific. I find that the filmmakers who live in the United States and are from the Caribbean, we don't really hear from them. We hear from the filmmakers in the Caribbean because they're the ones that are connected and have started trying to find different ways to get their information out. They do go online and they do look for people who are writing and talking about Caribbean films, and they contact us that way. It's for filmmakers who are in the United States, they have a whole bunch of other channels, and they don't need to necessarily use Caribbean news channels to spread the word about their work.
Uh-huh.
And they don't necessarily, like I said earlier, identify as Caribbean. So, and that's one of the things we're trying to change.
and so a directory would be very, very
Yes.
helpful.
Yes. Yes. There is something like that.
Uh-huh.
It's for artists in general. So it's not just filmmakers, it's also for visual artists and people in other areas of the creative arts. I don't remember the name of the site. But they do profile. It's kind of a directory, and they have people sign up, and they have their pictures up there, and I guess it's used for networking. But I've never met anyone on there. So, you need a directory, but it has to be beneficial to the filmmakers. It has to allow them, or the creative artists, however
Mhm.
you do it, has to allow them to be able to collaborate with each other easily, share information, get help, that kind of thing.
So, what role does mentoring play in how you conduct business at CAFA?
Okay. So when we actually work with filmmakers in producing films, our crew generally is younger people. So on the 6 a.m. Jessica set, we had, I want to say, 5 young men, all between the ages of 17 and 15. So, between 15 and 17, working on the set. And for most of them, it was the first time they ever worked on a film set. So we had to and they were handling different aspects of the production. So they had some training, and then they were able to work. And this is us giving them an opportunity to participate meaningfully in a film production, to see if this is actually something that they would want to pursue. And if they do, we would love for them to work with us.
Right.
But no, that's how mentoring plays a role in terms of what we do, because we're always looking for younger people to work with, to teach them the skills, and to help them if filmmaking is something that they're interested in. Because as we know in the Caribbean, the arts, I don't think, are revered as much as the sciences.
Right.
You grew up to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or something like that. But the prevailing view is that as an artist, you're gonna starve, because you could never do enough to make enough money, because it's just not that way. I mean, in our countries, and it's kind of the same way here. And so this is our way of giving these young people an opportunity to explore this and see if it's something that they are interested in and if they want to do. And, they can continue to work with us, or they can go find their own projects to work on.
So how would someone go about finding that kind of, help, so to speak?
I mean, outside of being able to work on a production, you would have to be able to find an organization that specifically trains filmmakers.
Okay.
And they mostly exist here in the United States, and there's always a cost. You may find every now and then, like the Brooklyn Public Library I saw tonight when I was reading, is offering a free class on Final Cut Pro 10.
Really?
Yes.
A free class?
A free class. You don't get the software,
Oh.
but you get some training for
Right.
an hour and a half. And so unless you can find things like that, these classes generally cost money. And the costs can be prohibitive. So it's always good if you're young and you're thinking that filmmaking is something that you want to do, that you're able to find. You probably have to do some.
Is there an age limit for these classes?
Probably.
Okay.
And that's probably a deterrent for younger people. But the young men that we worked with, we know them, and we've had conversations with them, and they've expressed an interest, and so we were like, okay, we're gonna have a production, so we're gonna test you out and see if you're serious or not. And it's funny, I mean, just leading up to the production, just having them respond to emails.
They did?
Yes, in which they're getting information and being told to do certain things.
Uh-huh.
That was the biggest test, because if you can't send someone an email and have them respond to it in the way that they need to, then you won't be able to communicate with them
Right.
at all. They can't just show up on the day of production and be like, okay, so what am I doing now? It can't work like that. Just because, as young as even though they're young, their primary mode of communication is not email. It's text messages or messaging on Facebook or any one of those
Very
things.
true.
It's
That's
not
true.
email. And so to get them to pay attention to their email and then read it and then respond, have their parents sign the papers that they're supposed to sign and stuff like that, and get
Right.
it back to us, actually demonstrated their level of commitment. And when they showed up on set, they were mostly with a few words of it's some set etiquette instruction.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to function very well.
You enjoyed it, the process?
I enjoyed the process. Yeah.
Well, what did you like most about it? What did you enjoy most about that?
What I enjoyed most about it is seeing them participate in the production in a way that they would not have been able to otherwise, and
Mhm.
actually enjoy the experience.
Would you say you were patient?
Yes.
You are.
Yeah.
Is it often that independent films get picked up for theatrical distribution?
It depends.
It depends.
All right. So if you're talking about independent films in the United States,
Uh huh.
made by American filmmakers, or something along those lines, then yes. A good example is Ava DuVernay, who made a film named Middle of Nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
for which she won the Best Director award at Sundance Film Festival last year. It's the first black woman to win that award.
Wow.
She was able to get her film into movie. She started her own distribution company, and through her distribution company, she got her film into theaters nationwide. And that's where I saw it. It was shown at the AMC Theater in Times Square. And that's kind of like, it's this whole independent film, especially black films. There's a whole new, I want to say, era that's opening up in terms of opportunities, through her company. And what she did was then she actually has two companies, and the way they function is a little bit different. But her second company, which is called Array, the first film they signed was a film by a Jamaican filmmaker, Storm Salter. And the film is called Better Must Come. And he entered that film into the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival in 2011, and he won the best film. And he also entered it into the Bahamas Film Festival, and he won an award there. So they were able to make the connection with Ava, and that was the first film she signed when she launched her second distribution company. So I think that's great for Caribbean filmmakers.
She's Caribbean.
She's not Caribbean. She's African American,
Ah.
as far as I know.
Right.
As far as I know, and she has since signed other films, but it was just great to see that her first film was a Caribbean film, and it kind of just shows, if you're able to make a quality film in the Caribbean, in your country, whatever it is,
Mhm.
it's a quality film, and you understand how to navigate in the world. You can stay right there in Guyana or Trinidad or Barbados or wherever you are and get your film into theaters in the United States and get a distribution deal. But your work has got to be good.
It's got to be good.
Your work has got to be good.
Do you think it is even for these independent films getting picked up? Do you think it's? I kind of like you kind of like answer this question, but I'm ask you anyway. Do you think it is even worth the effort?
Yeah. It's definitely worth the effort. And if you have that question in your head when you're making your film, then don't make it.
Don't make it.
Don't make it. Because the reward is not in, okay, let's say this. Half of what you get from making a film is the enjoyment of making it, of seeing your creativity come to life in front of you. And sometimes that's all you have. And if you're not satisfied with that, then you won't make any more films, or you won't make any more art. So the effort is always worth it. It's always worth it. You hope that when you're done, you're able to get it out to everyone, and you can walk on the red carpet at different film festivals and all that. But even if those things don't come, the satisfaction of seeing your art come alive, and seeing a smile on even one person's face, or a sense of wonderment at your film and the emotions that it raised in them, that usually does it.
What gives you satisfaction in what you do?
A lot of things. But really, I would say only one thing. Peace. Just being able to find myself in different situations, good and bad, and not get pulled in either direction too much. And just, navigate that.
How you manage that? Tell us your secret.
I don't have any secrets. But I'll tell you one very important thing that I think everyone needs, and it's a supportive family. Immediate family, as well as extended. And I have that. So in my home, I have a very supportive family.
Right.
And then my mom is always there, for this production that we're doing. She cooked for us.
Wow.
On the 2 days, or 3, how much of a days we were out there, she cooked our meals. For those days, and you would think that's actually a huge deal.
That's huge.
Because we're independent filmmakers, so we're not paying the guys that are working with us. We're not paying the sound guys who are standing there with the microphones on their
You're not paying
head.
them.
No, we're not paying them. So the least we could do is make sure they're not hungry.
They're fed, right?
Yes. So yeah, and they were very appreciative of the food. And then I have a cousin who let us use her car when we were not able to rent a van to carry the equipment and the people. So just having supportive family and friends
Yes.
is, I think, of the utmost
I
importance.
agree. I agree 100% with that. You're doing something that is different. You need your friends.
Yeah.
You need support.
And they come through, and whenever
Yes.
they do, it's always amazing
Yes.
to me.
Yes.
And yes, and then the satisfaction comes. Wow,
Yeah.
I actually know people who are like this.
Actually, it's very encouraging when you have people in your life that come true for you. Look at what you're doing and encourage you.
Yes.
And that's very important. I don't think enough is said about the importance of moral support,
Yeah.
of a word of encouragement. You're doing a good thing, or if you fall, they help you to get up or tell you to get up, or remind you that you can. Very, very important, right? So I get that. Would you say that the Caribbean community has an appetite for Caribbean films?
I would say that it is growing.
Yeah.
It's not where it needs to be. And I mean, when and I say this because I've spent some time looking at the Caribbean newspapers
Mm-hmm.
that are available to us. And apparently a lot of Caribbean people still consume their information in newspapers because Caribbean newspapers are very popular. Every time I go to the store to get food, there's a paper there that I can get to read. Caribbean Life, Kitro News,
Yes, that is
Caribbean
interesting.
Daylight.
With the advent of cyberspace.
We still read physical newspapers.
Uh-huh.
So I gathered as many of them as I could find, and I looked through them to see how many of them cover films, just films in general. And I found that several of them do, but they're all Hollywood films.
Oh.
They don't cover Caribbean films and Caribbean filmmaking.
We have to change that.
We have a plan for that.
Yeah.
We have a plan for that. So I think in the Caribbean community, the standard is still Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to appreciate films made independently
Mhm.
with next to no money is the same as being able to appreciate. It's like it's art appreciation.
Yes.
It's like it requires a different taste, a different mindset, a different way of looking at the work than you would a Hollywood film.
Mm-hmm.
So the Hollywood films are there for pure entertainment, and they have the money, and they can take you places, fantastical places.
Yes.
They'll bring a flying saucer onto the White House,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know, those action films, Fast and Furious, whatever. But what I find about independently made films and films made by people who are more interested in the art itself is that they can take you to those same places
Right.
with much less pizzazz. And I think, and this may be a judgment on my part, but I do think this with a lot more meaning. So you can look at a well-made film that cost $5,000 to be made, and leave with a connection to the film and the filmmaker that you will take with you for a while.
Romola, you almost answering my next question. And that is, I want to know, what is your experience on Caribbean talent in filmmaking?
We have some very talented filmmakers.
All right.
I'm not gonna lie, and the technology that exists today, it's affordable for someone to buy a camera
Mm-hmm.
or even rent it. The editing software, it's becoming more and more affordable. So if you have the desire and the passion, you can get yourself a camera, you can get some actors, and you can make a film. And put out, and if you have the talent, you put out something that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I can see, from the documentaries that are coming out, are the subject matters range. Like there was a documentary that was just made in Guyana. The filmmaker is from Canada, but the subjects were Guyanese, and it was made in Guyana. And the name of the documentary is "The Bastard Sings the Sweetest Song."
The bastard sings the sweetest song.
Yes.
Wow.
And this documentary is about the Guyanese guy who lives with his mother. He takes care of her. She's an alcoholic, and he raises birds. That's the film, and she's shown it all over the world. And then there's another documentary that's being shown in different film festivals now, made in Jamaica, named Redemption Songs, which is a documentary about the prisons in Jamaica where the inmates have access to recording equipment, and they can make music and songs and record them while in prison. And it's like it's the one, the conditions are appalling, like subhuman, subhuman.
Wow.
But they have this opportunity and this ability to make music while they're in prison. That's what the documentary is about. So we're seeing films like that, and then we're seeing films that are just purely creative films where someone will just sit there and write a story and then make a film. And then we see films that are based on Caribbean folklore, which are my personal favorites, because to take those stories and bring them, Old Haig and,
Yes, bring
and
them to-
Massacre Man and Baku and all this stuff,
right.
and bring them to life on the screen is good.
You have plans?
Well, I mean, one of the short films that was part of that Cine Guyana film thing was about the Baku.
Oh,
So people are already doing this.
okay.
People are already doing this.
So what kind of revenues can one make in the online market today on independent film?
The revenue is a trickle.
It trickles.
So when the thing about distributing films online is that you can't. I guess you have to make a choice. Do you want to get it out to as many people as possible, or do you want to get it out to fewer people? So that's your pricing depends on your purpose. So some people, like Sean, for example, SK that I mentioned before, his film is available for anyone to look at for free on his website. But you go to iTunes. Some filmmakers get their films into iTunes, and then you pay like maybe $10 or something like that. Someone will pay you $10, when they buy the film. But then there's a huge chunk of that goes to iTunes just because you have your film in there. So I would say it's one of those things where the expenses are high for the filmmaker,
Right.
but the films can't be sold. You just have to be able to get it out to as many people as possible.
You have to be patient then.
Yeah. And you can't make the films to make money. You hope that you make money, but you can't make it for that purpose, because
Uh-huh.
if you do, then you lose. You gotta get. You have to make good films so that
Right.
somebody will pay you to make your films,
Mm.
and that's where you make your.
That's
money.
your resume.
Yes, and that's your revenue. Your revenue is being paid to make your own film.
Ah.
That's where you make the money. You don't make the money from selling it, because that's usually out of your hands.
Right.
And by the time you get some money from it, it's like royalties from a.
So it's
from a
it's
from
the
a
making
song.
of the film.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
And what level, if any, of marketing and advertising is consistent with making these kinds of independent films successful?
You have to have in your budget. You have to have money to pay for marketing and advertising. Or there's a film that's coming out to Trinidad right now. God Loves a Fighter. Way before the film came out, way before the film was done, the PR person contacted us on the blog and said, "We're making this film. It's going to be done at this time. Look out for it." So we responded. So now we're on their list. So now the film is in post. It's almost done. So they've released the trailer.
Uh-huh.
They released the poster, and then they released the trailer. And they contacted us and said, we're about to release this film. We want you to help us spread the word. So we're doing it for free, but I'm sure that they have to pay other outlets to get the word out. But And they have a very targeted and strategic way of getting the word out about their film.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they have a Facebook page and a website, and there's a soundtrack to the film, and the guy who made the film like directed a couple of videos that are on the soundtrack, so he's promoting the music as well. It's just it's I can't stress how important it is to actually spend time thinking about how you're going to get your film out after you make it.
You know, listen to this question, right? It is believed that most filmmakers are still focusing on getting their movies made and are failing to take advantage of early social media marketing to build a buzz for the film. What are your thoughts? Yeah, you pretty much answer that, right?
Right, but if you're a one-man band,
Right.
it's a big issue for you. But if you're able to find people to work with, so you have a producer, you have a PR person, and you make it their jobs.
Okay.
So if you approach making your film from from like I want to say a holistic perspective, so you don't only think about the production, you also think about the pre-production, and you
Mhm.
think about the post-production, and then you think about when the film is done. Now, what am I going to do? So if you get all those pieces together before you start making the film, you don't have to do it yourself. You just have to know that it needs to be done and find someone to work with. To do it.
Okay. Okay. Knowing what needs to be done and then finding the talent to do it.
Yes.
Isn't that a shift in paradigm for a lot of people who like to do things themselves?
Oh yeah, it's very difficult for them. But I mean, after making one or two films and realizing, I'm putting all this time into it, and then no one sees it when I'm done. Hopefully you get the message.
Time is on us, so I'm gonna ask some rapid fire questions. I hope you can answer them.
I
as
would
fast
try. I
as-
would try. I would try.
Um, what would it take for the Caribbean film industry to grow on the scale like Nollywood or Bollywood?
Unity. There
Good.
has to be a way for people to get together
Uh-huh.
and share information.
Share like you and I do, collaborate
Yes.
and share.
Yes.
Do you still practice as an attorney? In what ways has being a lawyer been fun for you?
I do still practice. I have my own practice. And the fun part is, I don't even know. It's actually being able to help people. The not so fun part, I'm going to say this, is building the business.
Building it.
Yes. But when you actually have a client in front of you,
Yes.
that's great, because then you're listening to their issue, and you have your lawyer hat on, and you're like, okay, this person has a problem. I know they have a problem. How am I gonna use what I know and what kind of research I have to do to help them solve their problem?
Uh-huh.
That's good.
Yeah, building the business is a challenge. Ebony Princess said, "Hey, Cell, Trini locked on." Okay. I don't know what it means. If you could go back and change something related to your education or training, what would you change or what would you do differently?
Okay. I don't think I would change anything about my education. I would have just tapped into my life purpose, I guess, a little bit earlier in life. That would have been great if I
Life.
was like 25 and I knew that I wanted to get into film. That would have been great.
I think I'd do the same thing. Patrick said, "Excellent point about sharing and working together." And Ebony Princess said, "Well said. Unity is lacking indeed." That is so very true. I mean, going back to what you said earlier about the whole the lack of a repository where you can find filmmakers. I mean, you would think that you think that is there, or but yet it doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
Isn't that something? And Ebony Princess says, "Trini is in Trinidad." Smiles. Okay. I think I got that. And so, Romola, tell us about your personal philosophy for life and how that informs what you do in your business.
Okay, so this is where everyone thinks I smoke weed.
They think you smoke weed?
This is why, because my
Oh.
personal philosophy in life, my personal philosophy in life is don't worry, be happy.
Oh, you are funny.
And then they look at me and they say, okay, you smoke. No, but I do believe that life is what we make it,
Uh-huh.
and there is some form of existence after we leave
Right.
this physical plane that we're in. And so look to that, because you can spend all your time here building, accumulating wealth. It's all good to have,
Yes.
to
Yeah.
have the trappings, but when you leave, the only thing you can take with you is your soul. So if you spend your so my personal view is that I want to spend my time nurturing that,
Mm-hmm.
my soul, and working on that aspect of me, because and that just informs everything else that I do.
Mm. I like that answer. I really do. I really do. And what do you like? What do you look forward to doing on weekends?
Well, I haven't had a weekend to myself in forever. But if I were to answer that question, it would be to leave town and find. I don't even have to leave town, because
Uh-huh.
I actually like to do this. I like to just find a nice hotel in the city,
Right.
an expensive one that's like $200-300 a night or something like that,
Right.
and stay in it
I like that.
and eat the food.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
just be like, it's like an escape,
Right.
but you're not leaving, but you find a way to just carve out some time and some luxury for yourself.
I actually love that. I actually am planning to do something like that when I decide to just sit down and write my next book. Seriously.
There you go.
And do you have a particular practice to relieve stress? It's not a trick question,
I
Romola.
know, but the thing is,
It's not a trick question.
it's not a practice. It's just a way of life.
Uh-huh.
I look at things. I know what's stressful to me. I
Right.
can't always avoid them, but once I realize that I'm stressed, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna live like this.
Uh-huh.
So, get the hints.
Get
Get the hints.
Ah, okay. Whose voice do you hear when you're about to make a significant decision? You okay?
Yeah. I would have to say my partners.
You're
My partners.
mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right. And what would you want to do? What would you want to do if you weren't a lawyer?
I would be a beach bum.
A beach bum.
Yes.
And
I
mom is
would-
mom
I-
is listening in tonight.
Yeah. I would spend all my days on the beach, eating food and drinking coconut water. That's it. And lots of mangoes.
Why mangoes?
That's my favorite fruit.
Okay, okay.
Favorite.
Uh-huh. And my last question, which I ask everyone, what makes you laugh out loud?
Anything that touches my soul,
Uh-huh.
and that is halfway humorous, I will laugh out loud.
You laugh at that.
Yeah.
And I ask all my guests to take us out with a few words of wisdom, or some guests corrected me saying advice. I don't know about wisdom, but tell us.
Okay, so the closest I can come to that
Uh-huh.
is to say, just spend some time, tap into yourself, figure out what makes you go, and do that.
I like that. I want to say thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you're quite welcome. It was indeed a pleasure having you on, Romola. And you and I, we do collaborate. We do share
Yes.
information, and that's a beautiful thing. And if that attitude can spread, what a powerful community the Caribbean will be.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about trappings, and I go back to the conversation I had with this very, I would say, powerful woman today, and she's going to be on the show at some point, and where she said it is better to do what you love,
Mm-hmm.
and what you're called to do, rather than the trappings from the success of doing what you don't like to do.
Mm-hmm.
I also, from that, one of my philosophies or principles is that I am never, I'm never impressed by the material things people acquire, and so I'm not impressed by how many wells you have dug or how many wells you have, but how much and how many thirsts you've quenched. That is important to
Yeah.
me, right? And not the amount of food you've accumulated, but how much hunger you've helped to
Alleviate.
eliminate. That's important. So I was really moved just now when you mentioned it's about your soul. You can't take anything with you, and so you do what you have to do to help to nurture that. And so, thank you very much, and I hope you come back again sometime. And I wish you much
I will.
success with the film.
Thank you.
And good night.
Good night, sir.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay.